Has there ever been a time in your life when you were so dedicated to something that it literally defined who you were? Maybe studying to become a nurse or a doctor, for example, or starting a business and doing everything in your power to make that work. For me, it was swimming. One of my biggest goals for the longest time of my life was to be able to swim in the Olympics. So starting around my sophomore year in high school, I trained my butt off in hopes that I would be fast enough to make it to the Olympics by the end of my college career. And although I never actually made it to the Olympics, I met, befriended, and trained with many people who had. And there was an interesting thing that I noticed about all of us. Swimming was the thing that defined our lives in many ways. Not where we came from, not who our parents were, not our rank in Call of Duty, but swimming. Our shared goal of making it to the Olympics was so big that everything in our lives basically had to revolve around that goal. Our sleep schedule, our work or class schedule, what we ate, how much we ate, the events we chose to go to, the events we chose not to go to. Everything kind of molded around that one objective of being fast enough to swim in the Olympics. And I feel like for a lot of us, becoming debt-free is very much the same thing in many ways. At least for Brittany and I, we spent pretty much every waking hour of our lives for 3 years focusing on paying off our debt, $120,000 of debt. And there came a point after Brittany and I became debt-free and we had built up our emergency fund where it was like, okay, we're debt-free.
Now what?
Now what? And I think the reason this is because becoming debt-free is such a quantitative goal, and building up an emergency fund is such a quantitative goal, but everything after that is a lot more qualitative. It's much more like up to the individual. You know, when you're becoming debt-free, you have a set number you have to pay off. You know, in Brittany's my case, it was $120,000.
Yeah.
For some of you, it was like $88,000, $75,000, or $150,000, something like that. So that is a hard number that your mind is just set on. It's easy to think about bringing the however much debt you owe down to zero over a certain amount of time. So with all that being said, what's up guys? I'm Mike.
And I'm Brit.
And this video is going to be dedicated to some simple steps you can put into practice to help you regain focus in your life after becoming debt-free.
So the first thing we recommend, and what's helped us, is to remember why you became debt-free. So more than likely, it wasn't just to become debt-free and then that's it. For us, we wanted a house and we didn't want one with a lot of consumer debt. We wanted to be debt-free first before buying one and having a substantial down payment for it.
I would say it's okay if the reason you're becoming debt-free changes in the middle of becoming debt-free. If you guys are anything like Brittany and I were, during that process, you gained a lot of financial maturity and a lot of financial wisdom, or at least we did. The way that you think about money probably changes at least a little bit. You know, you may figure out that your goals at the beginning, after kind of learning a lot more about money and how money works, it may not be what you want, you know, at the end. And that's totally fine. Like Brittany just said, our goal at the beginning of our debt-free journey was to get a house. Because when we first got married, we could not get a house. The houses that we could afford were in areas that we did not want to live in. They weren't safe, and
it would cost too much to fix them up, and we didn't have the money.
Because of that, throughout our debt-free journey, paying off all of our debt, one of our biggest reasons for becoming debt-free was to be able to get the house that we wanted. But the houses that we thought we wanted at the beginning were like $500,000 homes, 4,000 square feet, you know, like there's all this fluff in them, quartz countertops, you know, like $20,000 master bathrooms, stuff like that.
We didn't need it.
After everything that Brittany and I learned becoming debt-free, we realized all that stuff, while it would be super nice, and maybe, you know, hopefully eventually one day we will be able to comfortably afford something like that, it did not make sense with our lifestyle and our income at the time. And our goal kind of shifted from wanting this huge extravagant house to wanting something a lot more consistent with our means and something that would allow us to continue to save money and invest and build up our future, rather than something that would just take half of our income every month, make us continue to live paycheck to paycheck as we were doing before we were becoming debt-free.
Right. So our priority shifted from the house to becoming more financially independent, basically.
Yeah.
So the second thing is to enjoy the moment.
Enjoy the moment. That is so important, you guys. Take a step back, look around, realize that you are debt-free. You're here, like you won.
Yeah.
The goal that you have been fighting for the past months, years, however long it's been, you won. Enjoy it. Because from now on, your life is going to be completely different.
Yep.
You're going to have a lot more choices. You're going to have a lot more freedom. In Brittany's and my case, I feel like we didn't miss the opportunity to do this, but we didn't realize how quickly our lives were moving at that time. And there was a bunch of stuff happening. And looking back, I wish we had made more time to enjoy the moment of becoming debt-free.
Yeah.
What happened with us is like our last student loan was paid off. It was kind of stressful because I was selling a car at the time. We only had one car. I didn't really need the car all that much.
And I was working over 40 hours a week.
She was working a lot, and we never really gave ourselves time to just kind of take a deep breath, take it all in, and enjoy it, as we should have. We did enjoy it.
We did.
We did do a little bit of that, but I wish we had done more.
Because it was more like a whoosh, all into the next step.
Yeah.
And that leads us into our third point, which is to celebrate.
Celebrate.
Yeah, so for us, our celebration was to be able to go to Dave Ramsey's headquarters and be able to do our debt-free scream.
Yeah.
So that was amazing. We were
Yeah.
really glad we did it. And I remember booking the hotel, and we got a little bit of a nicer hotel, not anything crazy, and then we were going out to eat.
We couldn't afford anything crazy.
Yeah, and we were going out to eat, and I was like, wow, we're actually eating out. And it was nice to be able to enjoy that.
The vision that we had in our minds of doing our debt-free scream in Dave Ramsey's office was one of the things that kept me going and gave me motivation to get to the finish line in terms of becoming debt-free and paying off $120,000. Celebrating becoming debt-free at his office, it like capped everything off. Like that was it. That's the end of that chapter. We're moving on to another one.
Yeah.
Like that's the close. It's the beginning of the next chapter of our lives.
Yeah, and we, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar, but he lets you sign a little tile. It's kind of like a glass tile with a permanent marker. And
That was in his old office.
Yeah, that was in his old office. And I remember when we wrote our little quote, it was first day of the rest of our lives.
Yeah. So in your own lives, whatever it may be, try and do something to celebrate, to finalize this chapter, to kind of close this chapter in your lives. No longer are you in debt. You are debt-free, and this is the beginning of the rest of your lives. Try and do something to commemorate that and kind of turn the page in the book of your life, so to speak.
So the fourth thing is your emergency fund.
Think of an emergency fund as kind of like a buffer between you and life. Because life happens, and it usually happens in times that are not very good.
Yeah.
You want a big pile of money as a buffer there to protect yourself. Normally, emergency funds are 3 to 6 months of expenses. And if you've been following Dave Ramsey, you will already have a little bit of one. So Dave Ramsey recommends $1,000. Brittany and I kind of veered off of that direction a little bit. I think the least we had in our emergency fund was $2,500 just because I was very anxious about having only $1,000 in the bank for 3 years.
And usually we had about right at 4,000.
Yeah, 3 to 4, somewhere in there. And it's a good thing we did because we had many events that came up which required a lot more than $1,000 to fix.
Yeah.
many.
We did.
So if you're debt-free and you don't have an emergency fund already, Brittany and I would strongly recommend you saving up for one. 3 to 6 months of expenses, just depending on the type of work that you're in or your risk tolerance, things like that.
Yeah.
If you're in more of a stable job that...
It's probably about 3 months worth of expenses would be good. Or if you're self-employed like Michael, we went with 6 months.
Yeah, or if you want even more than that. I mean, I've heard of people that have 2 years of an emergency fund. You don't want too much because then you have a big pile of money sitting there not doing anything for you.
Yeah.
So just take a look back at your finances and figure out, okay, well, this is my average amount of expenses every month.
Right.
Multiply that by between 3, 6, maybe 12 or whatever, just depending on your risk tolerance, and let that be that. This is an easy one to do because it's quantitative. There's like a hard number there. So this is, after you become debt-free, if you don't already have your emergency fund in place, this is going to be an easy one to build up to. And in Brittany's and my case, I think it took us like an additional 3 or 4 or 5 months after becoming debt-free to fully fund our emergency fund.
It didn't take too long because we were still on rice and beans and rice.
Yeah. So
very low with our costs of living.
Yeah. After becoming debt-free, living on scorched earth for so long, it was very easy for Brittany and I to continue living that way until our emergency fund was in place, ready to go, and we were kind of saving money on top of that to do things that we actually wanted to do. And this was the moment that Brittany and I kind of stopped and looked around at ourselves and looked at our income, and we were like, oh, now what do we do?
Yeah.
Like all the quantitative stuff is out of the way. All the goals that are easy to see and visualize, and there are hard numbers in place, those are done.
Yeah.
And now we have...
They felt like those really easy check boxes at the time.
Which leads us directly into the fifth thing that we would recommend doing after you become debt free, and that is really try and figure out what your goals for the future are.
Yeah.
Ask yourselves questions like, what do you want your life to look like in 5 years? What do you want your life to look like in 10 years? Do you still want to be at the same job? Where do you want to live? Do you still want to be doing the same thing? Do you want to have kids if you don't have kids already? Try and figure out things in as most detail as you can. The more detailed you can be in this, the more helpful it's going to be in allowing you to create this vision of what you want your life to look like. Because now is the time to do that if you haven't done that already.
Yeah.
You're debt free. You have an emergency fund in place. The future is yours. There are so many possibilities. And with Brittany and I, like, that's what kind of got overwhelming to us because we were like, oh my gosh, this worked.
Yep, now what? So after you have your goals in place, develop an attack plan to make it happen.
Yeah, this is the sixth thing that Brittany and I would recommend doing after you become debt-free. These are in no particular order, by the way. So you're here, your goals are way over here, what you want your life to look like 10 years from now or whatever. Develop a plan to get there. So if you're following Dave Ramsey, you completed the baby steps up to saving a 6-month emergency fund or 3 months or whatever. So after that comes investing 15% of your income, saving for a kid's college fund if you have kids,
paying off your house early if you have a mortgage,
and then building wealth and giving. Obviously, everyone's going to have to figure out what they want their lives to look like. And I think Dave Ramsey's steps are very good general steps to follow, but there's so much more to each and every one of y'all's lives that you're going to have to figure out for yourself. Do you want to invest more than 15%? Maybe you want to do something else with your money and you don't think investing 15% would be the best thing for you to do right now.
Maybe you don't want to buy a house and you want to continue renting at a low rate so you can actually invest a lot more and retire early.
So it comes down to your goals, what you want your goals, your life to look like. So like we said before, Brittany's and my goals changed. They shifted a little bit during the process of becoming debt-free. Our goals really changed after we did this next point we're about to talk about, and that is, if you can, take a risk. If you have the time, if you have the means, do something that you have been putting off for a while, whether that be because you're becoming debt-free and you didn't have the extra money or whatever. Try and do something that you wouldn't normally do up until this point in your lives. When Brittany and I did this, it really shifted our thinking and pushed our thinking to the next level when it came to our finances. That's when we really started looking more into the future and we're like, okay, our original goals, while they were good, they're not anything like this. We talked about this a little bit in the last video we made, but this for us was moving to Hawaii. After we became debt-free and had a 6-month emergency fund, our goal was to buy a house. I had visited Hawaii twice before all this. My brother used to live in Hawaii. I went to visit him a couple times while he was down there. Hawaii is amazing. Brittany and I were like, well, when we're looking for houses, there was this thought in my mind that came up kind of alongside looking for houses. I was like, well, do you want to just go to Hawaii? You just want to just move?
And I was like, yeah.
So we kind of explored that idea a little bit, and Brittany started researching, we both started researching ways that we could possibly move to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And in Brittany's case,
I work in healthcare, so I had experience in a certain area that was needed in Hawaii, so I was able to take a contract position there, and it happened very fast.
Yeah, so between the time that we started looking and researching about how we could move to Hawaii, Brittany got a job and we were on the plane with 5 suitcases.
And that was it.
And
we sold all of our belongings. We only had 5 suitcases.
Yeah.
And we shipped our car and sold the other one. Well, actually, my parents held on to the other one.
Yeah. You guys, it was a dream. I don't even know how to explain it. I cannot put it into words. I've been trying ever since we moved back from Hawaii to put our experience in Hawaii into words, and I fail every single time. It changed our lives on so many levels. And I understand that not everyone's going to be able to do something this dramatic in their lives. People have kids or whatever, or their circumstances are such that something like this, is not going to work very well. We spent 4 months in Hawaii. We decided to come back to the mainland for medical reasons that were going to take a while to get fixed or looked at in Hawaii.
It would have taken a while because the island we were on, it didn't have certain capabilities that the island of Oahu has in Honolulu.
We were on the Big Island.
So it would have taken a lot of back and forth and plane rides and a lot of expenses. So we decided to come back because of that. It just would have been too much money for that.
Hawaii is not inexpensive. Brittany and I spent a lot of money doing this, but in doing so we learned a lot about ourselves and a lot about what we actually value. We were taken so far from our comfort zone and placed in this totally new environment.
Yeah, new environment. We're meeting new people, trying something completely new.
And I couldn't
Big
get
change.
any work in Hawaii. Brittany did all the working in Hawaii. I looked.
Yeah, and every month we had about $500 net at the end of everything.
At the time, I worked in education, academics, and education in Hawaii, or the education field in Hawaii, at least from what we saw, is totally different than it is where we live, in the area we live in. And while I had a lot of work here, in Hawaii, it's just the emphasis placed on education is just different. So it was very difficult for me to get a job, and therefore it was very difficult for Brittany and I to see this working out kind of long term with the skills and the education and the experience we had so far.
Yeah.
So we moved back to the mainland, and ever since then, our goal has been to develop a source of income or sources of income that we can rely on, whether that be online or through investments, passive income sources that will allow us to get back to Hawaii and not have to worry so much about working in Hawaii. I think Brittany could always work there if she wanted to.
Yeah,
it's just the job market in Hawaii is totally different than it
is
is on the mainland, in many places on the mainland. Unless you're in Honolulu, and it's still very different in Honolulu. And it's extremely different on the Big Island where we were.
Yeah.
So long story short, that risk that we took of moving to Hawaii and losing probably $10,000 in the process, the vast majority of our emergency fund, that really shifted our thinking in terms of what we want our future and our finances to look like. And I feel like really took us to the next level. Even though we lost a bunch of money in the process, our thinking, our goals were like so much higher than they used to be, than they were before we moved, that I'm totally glad we went.
Yeah. It just pushed us to think even more long term and figure out ways to make that passive income a reality and that financial independence, like what we were talking about before.
Again, I know not everyone is going to be able to do something that drastic in their lives, but maybe think of something, small, medium, big, a risk that you could take in your own life that you've been just waiting to take and putting it off because you were not debt free. Now is your chance to do that if you can. An
example would be maybe you've been writing a book and now you have the funds to get it edited and published.
Yeah.
That's something.
Yeah, that stuff's not inexpensive either.
Yeah. And I don't know, there's just other things out there.
So that being said, you guys, those are our 7 things that we would recommend. Things that Brittany and I did, things that we wish we had maybe done more of.
Yeah.
After becoming debt free, to kind of get your lives back on track, to help you regain focus on what you should or what you could be doing right now and into the future. We hope this video was helpful. If it was, please give a huge thumbs up. It helps out the YouTube algorithm tremendously. Consider subscribing if you like videos like this or browsing the rest of our channel. We have a lot of other finance videos available.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram. It's Mike and Brit.
Yep, we have an account there. We have a few posts on it. We'll be posting there every now and then for the time being, probably more so in the future. If you're interested in investing, our Robinhood link is in the description. Sign up for Robinhood, you get a free stock, we get a free stock, everybody wins. Our budget template is also in the description. It's free. It's the kind of like the outline, the skeleton, if you will, of Brittany's and mine budget. If you haven't watched any of our budget videos, that's how our budget looks, and you can download exactly how we do it in the description. It's totally free. Instructions are on there. Thanks again for watching, guys. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Bye.